Red 2 standing by, all for lit and in the green. Welcome back to Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. We have Boles Roor and Ody Mandrell on display today. Ody Mandrell was famous for having a pit droid go through his engines and blow up his pod racer, rendering it unusable during the Boonta Classic, but he might be able to put in some good performances on the track. Boles Roor, on the other hand, is most famous as a glimmik singer, fairly popular throughout the galaxy. Think sort of heavy metal, but with more inspirational vibes. I'm not sure what the best way to describe it is, though I did try, but he does have a career as a pod racer, even if his craft is a bit of a junker. Will he hold up against the newer racers? Let's go and find out. We will be starting with Boles Roor. A Sneevil from Sneeve, once again showing amazing creativity on the part of the designers, Boles Roor carved out memorable and famed careers in two pursuits. His main career was as a glimmik singer. Glimmik was a genre of music similar to the heavy isotope sound, with similarly frenetic music and heavy beats, but generally using more inspirational lyrics and having a cleaner living yet more extreme edge. Roor was immensely popular in this role, frequently selling out concerts on Coruscant and popularising the genre. In his heyday as a pod racer, Boles Roor had won the Boonta Classic twice, and earned the track favourite status at Mon Gaza's Zhuge Challenge circuit. This was the track commissioned by Galactic Spice Mining Guild Kingpin Groff Zhuge, by the way. By the time of The Phantom Menace, Roor had been away from the sport for a while, since he considered glimmik his first career. Additionally, his poor attention to maintaining his classic pod racer, preferring to leave the work to his mechanic crews, had resulted in it becoming a bit of a junker. Age left the cooling system struggling, parts were replaced with inferior options, and fairly dodgy welding was employed. On the eve of the Boonta Classic, Boles Roor gave a glimmik concert at which many events surrounding Sebulba, Mars Guo, Old Arbido, Wan Sandage, and Team Topagalis were set in motion. Boasting of courage and bravery, Roor taunted nervous Tung pilot Ben Quadrineros, wagering him 5 million pegats, the major Huttese currency, which was one step higher than the Truget, he would not have the courage to enter the Boonta Classic. Quadrineros surprised everyone, including himself, by accepting, though Roor recovered face, quickly dedicating his first song to Quadrineros' bravery. Ben Quadrineros would indeed go through with entering the Boonta Classic, and earned his 5 million pegats since all he had to do was enter. Roor had never said anything about actually racing. Sadly for Quadrineros, his pod racer was the victim of sabotage by that notable genius, Ark Bumpy Roos, who thought he had sabotaged Anakin Skywalker's pod. Roor raced well, but he was last among those who finished the race, coming in 6th. Exactly how, if his average speed was cited at 781 km an hour according to Wikipedia, he finished behind Ilan Mak's distinctly crappier pod racer is unknown. But the most important matter was the bet. Quadrineros had kept his word, and Roor begrudgingly paid up. Pod racing would be put on the back burner as Boles Roor set out across the galaxy on a big tour. He gave his pod racer to his chief mechanic, Shrivel Braytrand, who modified it and used it to race for himself. 10 years later though, Roor would come out of pod racing retirement and perform in charity races to support Sneevil Senator Jolin Resbin in his advocacy of the Military Creation Act, which tied into the Grand Army of the Republic. Boles Roor pilots a pod racer with a notably long cockpit. Get your mind out of the gutter, or if you like, get them in the gutter now that I've provided you with an innuendo. The engines are two Bin-Gassi Racing Quadrijet 4-barrel 904E engines. The cockpit measures in at 6.86 metres and is nearly as long as the 7.39 metre long engines. A little ridiculous, but this is implied to be a fairly old and somewhat outdated model. Though it can hit a top speed of 790 km an hour, by the time of Episode 1 it's considered somewhat obsolete. Nonetheless, Boles Roor kept it throughout his career. As we can see, some of the stats are a bit iffy to average for beginning stats, save for that top speed. Obviously, this clunker is pretty fast. We'll see how everything shapes up though. Let's see just what this outdated racer is actually hiding. Traction will, again, sort of jump up to that around average point. It's nothing really fancy. Turning, on the other hand, like most racers, will actually jump up pretty well. They're not really actually terrible as far as handling goes, I've seen. Acceleration, on the other hand, will not be particularly outstanding, around about that halfway mark. On the other hand, he's hitting top speed with a plug 5, making him one of the fastest racers in the game. So he's going to be very, very quick, but he might not do great as far as acceleration goes. Braking is actually pretty decent by the end of it. Cooling systems are not outstanding, keeping in line with the apparently aging craft having a few systems wearing down. Repairs actually go pretty well, all things considered, given that it's said to be in fairly shoddy condition by the time of the movie. Now, if you want a fairly fast vehicle with decent handling, Boles Roor will do the job. The fat lady, or in this case the small Sneevil, has sung, and we have the results for Boles Roor's laps. Boles' times varied a bit. There were some shockers, but he did put in some fairly consistent times. Those powerful engines of his do benefit him on the straights, but unfortunately not quite as well on the twisting and turning tracks, so you might want him for the more simple ones along the way. Anyway, Boles Roor's best time winds up clocking in at 2 minutes, 2.836 seconds. So pretty decent, around about the middle of the pack in all fairness. Pretty much bang in the middle of the pack as he has come in at 10th place. How will Ody Mandrell do in the next stage of our competition? Let's get around to finding out. Ody Mandrell is a Tatooine native of the Air Kit species, and is actually fairly young compared to many other racers. He's only just out of his teens. The air kits have naturally tough and durable skin, a real boon for Ody as he raced like the quintessential daredevil. Risks and thrills were what Ody sought, and he would get plenty of them during his career. If a corner could be taken dangerously, or he could blast through dangerous areas at top speed, he would do so, laughing like a madman all the while. Odie Mandrell was also skilled at the battles which occurred mid-race due to the bulky and durable engines his pod racer used. Unfortunately, as he discovered during the Boonta Classic of 32 BBY, they weren't durable enough to avoid being wrecked by a wayward pit droid. Ody had performed reasonably well throughout the race, but when he came in for a pit stop, one of the droids got sucked into his engine, wrecking it and putting him out of contention. The pit droid survived its trip through the engine, which actually goes to show that being comic relief is a much better option for survival than having a family, as Rats Tyrell discovered to his fiery and explosive horror. Thankfully for Ody, he was able to repair the engine and get back to racing. He established himself as the track favourite on Ordibana's Death Row's Revenge circuit, a great location for his thrill-seeking tendencies. He participated in the race on Yusaron, where Anakin Skywalker challenged Hekula, the son of Sebulba, for the freedom of Jula Tyrell, but crashed. Ody would remain on Tatooine after his pod racing career ended, and worked at the Mos Espa Grand Arena during its days as a swoop racing arena. Tinto Pagales would wind up being his co-worker, in an unusual twist of fate. The two of them would recount Anakin's exploits in the Boonta Classic for Luke Skywalker just a few months after the Battle of Endor, and also guided him to Anakin's old friend Walt. Ody's other connection to the heroes of the saga came in 8 ABY, where he provided Han with a swoop bike, which was actually a pod racer engine with a seat basically, during a chase to retrieve the grass painting Killik Twilight. So it looks like old Ody did pretty well for himself all told. Ody Mandrell's pod racer is a simple but efficient model powered by two XL Brock XL 5115 engines. It could hit a top speed of 790 km an hour, the engines measure 8.69 metres long, and the cockpit is 3.76 metres long. Not a lot is known about this particular pod racer. The design obviously does what it needs to. It's very good at mid-race combat, and it's obviously durable enough and simple enough that it just gets the job done. Ody actually has some really solid base stats apart from that poor top speed. So if you're looking for a capable racer to help you learn the ropes, look no further than Ody Mandrell. But, of course, let's see how he winds up faring when we get those parts in. When it comes to traction, again, probably one of the better racers, but still not supremely outstanding. When it comes to handling, he will actually do quite well. This is around about the benchmark for most racers, I'd say. And when it comes to acceleration, he will still do roundabout bit better than average, I'd say. Top speed is not fantastic. He'll jump up to top with a block 6, not being super quick, but he should do the job pretty well given he's got great stats elsewhere. Air brake holds up pretty well, we'll hit top with that. Cooling systems are, well, they're decent enough, but not supremely outstanding, and repair will be very good. So if he gets damaged, you can rely on this as a pretty good, a pretty good beginning racer. While he may not excel at absolutely everything, he will have a lot of consistency in his favour. Okay, so Ody Mandrell's fourth time might be a little bit rusty because I actually mucked up the order and started recording Ody's laps before Boles Roor's. I started doing Boles Roor's, finished them, moved on to the next one, forgot about Ody's final lap. So I had to do that again. Then I accidentally lost the footage, and so I had to do it again, and I think the rust showed, but fortunately, Ody Mandrell put in some really impressive times. His best one really pushed the limit, and he made it to 2 minutes 0.949 seconds. A pretty impressive effort, which puts him 4th on the leaderboard. Not too bad. Just getting under that 2:01 mark puts him ahead of Ebby Endicott and Clegg Holdfast. Just behind Wan Sandage, not too shabby all things considered. Ody Mandrell has a very bright career ahead of him. And given that he's one of the starting racers, it might be hard to go wrong with him. Practice and you'll do very well. In the next episode, we will be looking at Ben Quadrineros, who is famous for having his pod exploding, and Fudd Sang, who would have appeared in the movie but unfortunately didn't, only showing up as a little figurine on Anakin's desk. Fun little bit of trivia. Anyhow, that does wrap things up for this particular episode. Until next time, this is Red 2, returning to base. May the Force be with you.